For this sketch exercise, we're going to be making a marker value plan in preparation for rendering your geometric shapes. Now what you're going to need is your marker paper, a ballpoint pen for sketching, and specific gray markers from your kit. If you're using Prismacolor, you need the 10% cool gray, the 30% cool gray, the 50% cool gray, the 70% cool gray. You'll need your white Jelly Roll pen, your Pilot white pen, and if you have a white China marker, that would be great. Your black colored pencil from your pencil crayon kit, your Pentel sign pen if you have one, and a Sharpie if you don't, and also your pigment liners. If you're using the touch markers or any other brand of marker, they're equivalent. So you'd be using the 0.5 or the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7. Take your piece of cartridge paper and make a template so that when you make your drawing, it doesn't exceed the size of your marker paper. Now, because of my camera setup, I can't make one this big. I have to make it a little smaller in order to accommodate that. The first thing we have to do is to make a scale at the top, and then we follow through when we draw our objects down below. We're dealing with 3 value sets. The first one is the light, the next one is the halftone, and the third is the shadow. There are 3 values in the light, so you'll need 3 boxes, 2 values in the halftone, and 2 values in the shadow. We're going to leave the white of the paper, so white paper is our first value in the light. %, cool gray is our second value, and 30% cool gray is our value, our next value. And in the halftone, we're going to begin with 30% cool gray and introduce 50% cool gray. In the shadow, we're going to begin with the 50% cool gray and add some 70% cool gray. If you're using the touch markers or another brand of marker, then it would maybe be your 0.5 or your 1 cool gray, your 3 gray, your 3 gray and your 5 gray, your 5 gray and your 7 gray. And we can begin now to draw our shapes. What's important when we're rendering the shapes is that we leave these areas as key lines of white on the cube, and we leave this key line of white on the cylinder. But because we're making this template, we can freely draw that in. It won't be a problem for us now. And as you know, when you're drawing your box, your cube, that And you can cross your corners. That gives you more exact corners. That this side is angled up toward the vanishing point. And we have to choose a depth that's less than half the width of the front in order to get a cue. So here we have those lines in, but it won't matter when we go ahead and render it. We'll just leave those out. And you'll recall your shadow. How do you make your shadow? And let's get this sphere over with, because that's always tricky. And remember, the gesture is the best way when you're making your template for your sphere. A gesture. Use your whole arm and make a nice gesture. And then when you're ready, you can choose the lines you want to keep. So we're sketching, we're using our pen. You can use your ballpoint pen. I'm using something a little darker so that you can see what I'm doing here. And our shadow for the sphere, as you know, is the same shape, just in this direction. Now we're doing it again as if our light is from above and in front and from the left. So our cast shadows are on the right. Now our cone, we need another ellipse, and you remember when we're sketching ellipses, we always do them a little more shallow at the back and more, give them more depth at the front. And you draw a vertical, you look from this edge to this edge and find the middle, draw your vertical. So you can do some overlapping here, that's okay. And you try to keep them relatively the same size, one to the other. I can still see some of my shadow from my sphere. The idea too is to begin to do some overlapping, because that's how the world really is. We don't see everything, little separate things, they're all together overlapping. And here I'm going to put my cylinder. So again, when I make my ellipses, I make it a little bit more shallow in back and a little fuller at the front. And if you want to be even more accurate, the whole ellipse on the top is shallower than the one at the bottom. They get more full, they open up more the further below your eye level that they are. Now the cone shadows, you recall, you put this back, and I'm drawing right over the cylinder because I want to get this right, and I won't, if I can't see where it ends, I won't get it right. This method of drawing overlays is one that we're going to use over and over and over. It's the only way to get to be able to see through things, to see through to the other side, and to get accurate shadows, because we have to be able to see how they begin in order to end them properly. And as you know, from the middle we go forward, you can get that. And once I've got this all laid out, I can go now to my marker paper. and get that going. One thing I'm going to do too is to put a bit of a background here, so I want to make sure that when I do that, I'm going to draw it all the way across, because I want to make sure that nothing is going to not fit. So if this is the back of my box, this tells me how much distance I have between the box and the back of the back edge. And the sphere, I know I have room for my whole sphere. And the cone has plenty of room, and the cylinder, there's plenty of room for that as well. Remember, when you take your paper out of your pad, be careful when you do it. You have these little strips of paper, they can damage the next sheet that you take out. So you peel those back as best you can and flatten this out and pull it toward you. And immediately turn it over and make a pencil line on the back, because that's the side you're going to use. I am going to put a border. You have a border to follow because you have the border that you made for the edge of your marker paper. Now we're freehanding. And you can cross your corners for your border as well, because that makes the corner more accurate, as you know. Now I've got a chance here. I can revisit my composition and change things. The cube seems a little far away from everything, so I might move it forward, for example. But I'll start at the top. You don't have to start at the top. You can start anywhere you like, but I'm going to start at the top. I can make a better job of making these more the same size now. I have a second chance. Now I have to be a little far away here or my head will get in the way, so I'm not as neat here and accurate as I should be. But this is a sketch, so hope you'll forgive me. I'm about an arm's length away from what I'm doing, so and you're doing a sketch too, so this always tidies things up to put a line above and below. Got a little low on the page here, so I'm gonna bring this up a bit. This could actually be a little bigger too, but okay, there we go. Now, remember, don't draw those inside lines. I have to remind myself not to do it. Now, what you can do, though, is take your 30% cool gray, or your 10 if you can see it, but the camera won't pick that up, so I'm going to put a line in here so that I'll have that as a guide when I use my markers. You don't outline your shadow with black either, because shadows are transparent, so you outline them with your 30% cool gray as well. Now for my sphere. This is the light, so if I can leave a little gap there. I don't have to outline it every way around. Now, if you want to use your number 7 pigment liner for this rendition, that would be fine. I don't think we need it to be any thicker than that. On a full sheet of marker paper, the Pentel Sign Pen might be better because it's a little bit thicker, but for my small ones that would have been too thick, too big. And again, for our shadows, you use your 30% cool gray. For my cone, see if I want to reposition that a little bit. Maybe I'll bring these two up a bit. And for ellipses, I often find that if I come from the edge, and it can be a little lighter in the middle, that's okay. That crossed over at the top, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. Just remind yourself this has to go in as a cool gray. I'll see if I can't make this a little straighter. That's the great thing about doing overlays. You get a second chance. Now, if I could move this, I would have moved it to help me. Sometimes you turn it upside down, and it's easier. We want to put our wall in as well, a little line for our wall at the back. And I think it goes all the way across, so that's good. Okay, and this always helps, a little bit of a line top and bottom. That'll clean up our type. And then you remove your template, but you leave a lot of cartridge paper underneath because we know that our inks are going to bleed.